last episode, we used the ember-validations library in order to show errors on our forms. However, we didn't actually show errors on our forms yet. We just caught the errors and showed them in a console.log. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how to display those validation errors. We're going to be doing this in two ways. The first is through flash messages, and the second is through inline error messages. So flash messages, in episode 57, we learned how to use EmberCLI Flash to show those. And we already have flash messages in the application template. What we need to do is in our controller, we take our errors hash and we turn that into a series of flash messages that can show to the user. So to jog your memory, this is how flash messages work. First, you call to get flash messages, and then you add them by calling something like warning or success, or in this case, danger, and then you send it a message. Now, when we have an error, it'll display a flash message. However, we're going to want something more specific than that. We're going to want to get it from the errors. The errors hash, if you remember from last time, is a series of nested hashes. So it has model. The model has several different properties, seconds and title in this case, and then it has errors on each one where there are errors. In this case, there are 2 errors on title and none on seconds. So first we'll get the various error hashes, and we'll get that from the errors hash going down to the model. Then we'll pull the various keys from it. In this case, it'll be title and seconds. Then we'll loop through those keys and use that to pull the value out of the error hashes. Each value is an array of different messages, so we'll loop through that. Then we'll grab our flash messages array, and we'll add something that says key and then the error. So it'll say something like title is not long enough. Then we can remove this old flash message. Let's go ahead and look at this in action. So we'll remove this title, we'll make this not a number, and it's giving us these errors. But they go away really quickly, so let's go ahead and make them sticky. And since they're sticky, we'll need to remove them every time. So we'll run this again. It gives us these errors and they can stay there. The user can make them go away by clicking on them. So this works, and it's fairly easy. And you could theoretically create a method called like send errors to flash and have that run wherever you want to have this type of action. It's agnostic to what the errors actually are. However, the user experience is not great. You see these errors and you have to go find them below. And in the case of seconds, it looks like it's called length, even though it's named seconds. So let's try to find a way to put these inline. So below each of the things where we have a validation, we'll want some sort of component. We'll call it display errors. And then we'll pass it in errors, and we'll pass it in a Boolean that says whether to show the errors. So the errors in this case will be found on the errors hash, and then we'll go into the model, and then title, and then show errors will be appropriately named. Notice the correspondence here. So we'll separate this out, and the value of this input is model.title, and the errors are errors.model.title. So what would this display errors component look like? Well, we would have an if statement saying, okay, we're only going to show these if the show errors Boolean is true. Then we're going to loop through the errors and show all the errors in red. Then we'll go ahead and create another display errors component for the other property that has a validation. And then notice that this is in the edit fields component, so we'll have to pass in the errors hash and the show errors Boolean to that component. So we're back in the edit controller, and let's start off by having show errors equal to true, and we'll see how that affects it. So we can start deleting this, and when it gets below 5, it'll show that error. When there's nothing, it'll say can't be blank. This is pretty good, so I'd say this is good for edit. But why did we want to have that show errors Boolean? So let's go to our posts new template, and when we're calling to edit fields, we'll put in show errors and errors, and then we'll go ahead here in the controller, set show errors to true. Let's see what happens there. This is basically repeating the work we did for the edit controller. So we start off with all the errors showing, and that's not great. So in our new post controller, we'll set show errors to false automatically, and then once saving has failed, then we'll set show errors to true. When we go to our page, it doesn't show any errors. until we hit save, and that's just the behavior we want. So in this episode, we saw 2 different ways to show the error messages to the user. One was using flash messages, and the other was to show them inline. Tune in next week as we talk more about validations, how to do more advanced validations than just length and presence. I'll see you then.